Okay, I am here to tell you about Epstein-Barr virus and how we read the labs on those. And I hope that the Zoom works and I can share my screen with you a couple of times throughout this presentation. So Epstein-Barr is the virus that causes mono, and 95% of us have it and have had the kissing disease in the past. Now, Epstein-Barr is a virus that is a lot like the virus herpes when you get a cold sore, or varicella, which is chickenpox when we're a kid, and shingles as an adult. They are viruses, they are all under the headline of herpes simplex viruses that um, will stay in your body once you're infected, and they'll go dormant, but they will always be there. They're always going to be in the body, and they are waiting to come back out and play, and will do so specifically, usually under stress. And the stress, I want to go back and remind you that stress is not only the external family, job, money, whatever we have outside of us, but also internal. So if you're sick, if you're in pain, if you have a lot of inflammation going on, although Epstein-Barr causes its own form of inflammation, or if you have nutrient deficiencies or hormone imbalance, a lot of times that's enough of the stress to make Epstein-Barr come out. So what I want to do first is I want to show you how we read the lab. So I'm going to bring up, I hope I'm going to be able to share the screen here and you be able to see it. And I want to look specifically, if I can bring this up to where you can see it, the 4 different labs that I look at when we are actually looking for whether we have a reactivation or not. So we have 4 different antibodies that we test in Epstein-Barr. And if you remember, antibodies are the things that I call the little soldiers that go out to fight things. But antibodies are there to protect us and to take down infections and viruses and other things that are going to be going on. So there are 4 that we look at through the lens of looking for a reactivated Epstein-Barr. When you look down here, this nuclear antigen antibody is the thing that shows us there's a history. There's a history of the fact you had it. Usually it's when we're younger, usually teenage years, early 20s, not always, but it is common at that. And when that number is elevated above 18, then we know that it is a reactivation. When we look at, and in this case, this patient's number is high. Typically when I see things that are not reactivated, the antibody count isn't as high as this, but in her case, we're going to talk about a reactivation. Then we go up here to this what they call the VCA, the viral capsid antigen. And when this one is high, then if it is only the VCA and the nuclear antigen that are elevated, then we have some controversy on whether it is an active infection when the numbers are really high, like this one where it's over 750. So whenever you see the VCA being over 750, or this one down here, this nuclear one being over 600, that means they don't test it any further than that. So this 750 could be that the patient has a VCA level of 5,027, or it could be it's at 757. We don't know, and I have done everything I can to try to get those numbers, but the labs just don't test for it. They believe that it is not clinically relevant, and my argument is, but it is, because people like to see their numbers coming down if we're treating it. But when it is just those 2, there's a little bit of debate on whether it's a reactivated infection. But what we do know is when they're this high, when the VCA is over 750, you probably have what we call chronic Epstein-Barr syndrome, which means you are being reactivated often. And if it is only the 2 numbers, the VCA and the nuclear antigen, and they're really high, you may not be in a reactivation at that moment, but like I said, it's a chronic thing for you, which usually means we need to do something about the stress response. Now we look at the other 2, the this one, the IgM is fine. it is not elevated. That one is usually the one I see often that's not elevated. But when we get down here in this early antigen, the early antigen basically is high in the beginning of a reactivated infection. And in this case, we want this number under 9, and this patient's at 98. So we know that this is a reactivated infection, and we need to do something about it to actually put it back to sleep. Now I'm going to stop sharing here and come back to you. Let's see if I can't make this be a little bit bigger. And let's talk about Epstein-Barr and what we do with it. So when we're dealing with Epstein-Barr, we have to do a couple of different things. One, we really want to bring that Epstein-Barr down, right? We really want it to be much better than it being elevated. We want it down under 9 and calm everything down in our body. Because the thing that happens with Epstein-Barr is that it is a very inflammatory virus that's going to cause pain and inflammation all over the body systemically. And if you have existing pain, it's going to make that worse. And the other thing is we want it to go back to sleep so that it actually calms down the fatigue we might be having. Because if you think about mono, if you know you've had it, if you've had it and you know you had it, then often we can go back to, oh my God, I'm hitting a wall. I'm so exhausted. I can't function. I can't think. I can't move. And that is classic of this virus. And so the two symptoms I always tell people we start to deal with are fatigue and inflammation. And we need to bring that down and kind of calm it down. So the first thing I do is I try to attack, if you will, the virus. And then the second piece is, remember how we got here with stress? We need to actually improve the stress response. Notice I didn't say reduce your stress, because in some cases you can't control the stress. But we need to make your body so that it can handle and kind of bring into homeostasis or if you want to call it Zen, of your stress response so that your body can handle the stress as well. And so when we look at doing the attack, the first thing I look at in most of the teaching and most of the research I have looked at, one of the best things that we can use naturally, I mean, we can use antiviral medications. I have not found them to be I've not found them to be very effective with most of my patients. One of the things that is really common is that when you have an autoimmune disease going on or an autoimmune disorder going, Epstein-Barr is very common to be with it. Same with Lyme. Lyme EBV and Lyme go hand in hand. And so we're then making the inflammation bigger. And I try not to use antivirals if I can help it at that point when we're dealing with those kind of things. And so the thing that I have found that you can really use to fight a virus with is a chemical component of coconut oil called lauric acid. Now, lauric acid you can get in a couple of different forms. You can get it in, and I didn't bring mine with me. I was going to show it to you. You can get it in a form of capsules. The problem with doing the capsules of what they call monolaurin is that, number one, there's fillers in them. And number two, the other thing that happens is that you're going to have to take 12 extra pills a day. Now, most of my patients do not want to take another 12 pills over what they're already taking, so I try to stay away from it. So I went looking for an alternative, and one of the thing that I found, and a lot of people are now using for multitude things instead of Epstein-Barr, is a supplement called lauricidin. And I will put up a picture so that you have that at the same time. But lauricidin is it comes in a little tub, and when you open it and you look at it, it looks like pellets of coconut oil, because that's basically what it is, minus everything but the lauric acid. And so there's no fillers in it. It's just pure lauric acid. And you're going to take it 3 times a day. So there'll be a little scoop in there, a little blue scoop that you will use to take out the pellets, and you're going to take out a scoop, like I said, 3 times a day, and put the pellets on your tongue. Now, when I do it, I actually take it out and I put it in my hand, and then I put it in my mouth. Doesn't matter. Just get it on your tongue. You only want it to sit there for a second or two anyway. And then you want to wash it down. Now, here is one of the really big things I have to tell you about this, is that you want to make sure that you're washing it down with something cold. And when I say cold, I mean tap water or colder. Because if you decide to wash it down with something hot, say coffee, hot tea, whatever, what ends up happening is you're going to, get ready for this, feel like you washed your mouth out with soap and it's going to last about 3 hours. Ask me how I know. I tried it just because I had to prove a point so that I'm always the guinea pig for patients. And so it was the most god awful. Okay, maybe not the most god awful, but it's really ranked up there. And it didn't matter what I ate or drank, I couldn't get rid of that taste. And so what the reason for that is because lauric acid was what we used to use as what coconut oil actually lathers soap, and lauric acid is that chemical component that does it. So you're going to taste like you wash your mouth out with soap. So don't do it. So you want to do it with the cold water. The other thing you want to take into consideration too is you may need to cut back. Instead of starting with a full scoop, start out slowly and do like a quarter of a scoop 2 or 3 times a day, and then up it to half a scoop, and then 3/4 until you get to the full scoop. Because it sometimes can cause some gut issues. Usually it's diarrhea. I've had a couple of people that had a little bit of gut pain. It didn't last long, and once they stayed at the lower levels and moved up, they were fine. If you get that you can't tolerate a full scoop, that's okay. Go to the one that you can, because anything we're using to fight is better. And so the beautiful thing about lauricidin is not only is it highly antiviral, it also helps build your immune system, reduces inflammation, helps to help heal the gut. And it just is a really good all around antimicrobial for any of the things that you really don't want in your body. And so there will be a link that I can send you to as far as that goes. So that's the first thing that I do to attack. The second thing that I do, if you look up Epstein-Barr at all, you're going to run into a bunch of writing on celery juice. And celery juice is something that is really great at helping fight the Epstein-Barr virus, and can be done daily. And basically you want to do between 8 and 16 ounces once daily, or 8 ounces twice if you want to do the full 16 ounces. And so you want to use the juice. It's not, I've had a lot of patients ask me, well, why can't I just eat celery? And can I put it in a smoothie? Here's the thing about the eating. I don't know how many people remember this, but when I was early 20s, when I was dieting and things, you always saw this thing about eat celery because it's a negative calorie food, right? So the whole point to that is it takes more energy for the gut to break down the celery than there are calories in it. So that's the negative calorie food. But that's a problem when you're trying to deal with this virus. You want those nutrients where the body can grab them. And when you're doing a vegetable and juice, you're able to, the body does not have to do a lot of breaking down in order to take the nutrients into the body and do what they need to do. And so celery juice is an option. There is another option that is out there. For those of you who know me, know that I'm big on doTERRA essential oils because of their research and some of the things they do medically. And I'm not going to go into any of that. But doTERRA back in October came out with a celery seed oil that will work a lot of the same way without you having to juice every day. It's more cost effective, and a lot of people have a hard time juicing. But the juice is great. It is very hydrating. It gives you a lot of oomph, and it's wonderful. But the celery seed oil is an option. Do not, though, go buy just any celery seed oil and try to take it internally. It's not a good thing. If you have questions about that one, just ask me. So those are the two things that I look at starting with. And what I'm going to tell you today is just a start. There are other things that we can do that will help with taking down the virus, but I like to start slowly, and then we go along the path. Because if we put you on a ton of things to begin with and something doesn't agree with you, then we've got to stop everything and figure out what it is. Or on the flip side, if it's working, we don't know what's working, and you're going to be taking a bunch of things, for a long time. So we don't really want to do that. So I start with this. So then my other side is, let's really work with the stress response. Now, again, if you know me at all, you know that I love herbs and you know that I have studied herbs for a long time. And I really, 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 really love adaptogenic herbs. And so the adaptogens, what adaptogens do, there's only 25 herbs that right now we classify as adaptogens. And what they do is they balance out the stress response. They support the adrenal glands, your stress center. They support the thyroid, and they really try to help the body with what's going on when you're running from a bear, because that's my analogy with stress is your body thinks you're running from a bear, and so it's going to react accordingly. So we need to really support the body and just kind of calm those things down a little bit, right? So the one I always start with is an herb called ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is a very, very, very old herb. It's been used in the Ayurvedic tradition, which is an ancient medical tradition out of India. And it has been used, at the root of the plant has been used for about 4,800 years, a lot for this whole purpose of calming the body and calming things. When I first started using it, I used it with patients for anxiety and stress. And it does a beautiful job. I mean, I'm one of these, I just really love ashwagandha. The beautiful thing about ashwagandha, it not only helps with the calming of stress, it actually supports the thyroid, it supports the adrenal glands, it helps your body absorb minerals, especially iron. It helps with immune function, it reduces inflammation, it helps with focus. It's a lot, it does a lot of things. And it's great at helping us as we start to try to work through Epstein-Barr and building the stress response for your body so that we can calm down not only your stress, but also the virus itself. And so I start out with ashwagandha first. And like I said, there are other things that I can add, but I like for the first couple of months to really start with these real basics. And with ashwagandha, you can take a lot of it during the day without being afraid of it. You can take up to 6,000 milligrams. Now, the brand that I prefer is Pure Encapsulations. I think it is by far the best ashwagandha that I have used, unless you're using a tincture. This is in a capsule. And when you get those, it is 500 milligrams. The pills are 500 milligrams a piece. So what I tell you to do is start out with at least 2 in the morning, and then whenever you need it. So whenever you get irritable, whenever you get stressed, anxious, angry, anything like that, take one, because it will calm down things within about 15 to 20 minutes. It's amazing, because basically what happens is you don't even know that it's working until you look back half an hour, 45 minutes later, you go, huh, that irritation resolved itself. And it's because it is just working through the body instead of being like a Xanax, where you have, number one, the Xanax is not really doing anything to help your body. It's actually masking a symptom that we may need to hear a message from. But it also can make you loopy or sleepy, and ashwagandha will not do either of those. The beautiful thing too is there really aren't any documented side effects that we need to be concerned about, and it doesn't interfere with most medications. And so you've got a really good balancing herb there that can help. And so that's how I recommend starting with the ashwagandha. So like I said, let's recap a little bit, is that we're going to try to attack the virus by using the lauricidin, adding celery if needed, and then building up the stress response with the ashwagandha. And I start with these few things first. We check labs again in 2 or 3 months, see how things are going, see how you're feeling, because I don't like chasing numbers on labs. We really have to know, how are you feeling? Do you feel better? Do you feel more calm? Do you have more energy? Is the inflammation feeling like it's going down? All of that is really important, and more so than the lab, but I typically check labs and see where we're going with this. This is not a quick fix. It's going to take several months before we get to see really improvement on the labs. Like I said, I'm much more concerned about how you feel. So this is how we're going to start with it. And like I said, we'll check labs again in a few months and go from there. If you have any questions, just let me know and I will see what we can do. Have a wonderful day.